We already decided this would be easier for everyone. My hands shook. The grocery bag hit the floor. I couldn't breathe. They had no idea what I was about to do next. There I was, standing in the doorway of my own house, watching my son Michael hold a measuring tape in my living room. His wife Jennifer was pointing at my back wall like she was planning renovations. Her mother sat in my reading chair, sipping coffee from a travel mug. And a woman I'd never seen before held a clipboard, looking at my ceiling like she was calculating square footage. Real estate agent. I knew the type immediately. I'm Margaret Sullivan. I'm 72 years old, and I'm here in my living room in Cedar Falls, Iowa, the house I bought in secret 6 months ago with money from selling the family farm. The house that was supposed to be my fresh start after losing my husband Robert 2 years ago. The house that apparently my own son thinks he can just take. Michael didn't even look surprised when he saw me. "Mom," he said, like I was interrupting something important. "You weren't supposed to be back yet." I stared at him, my key still dangling from the lock behind me. "This is my house." "Exactly," Jennifer cut in with that smile. "Too wide, too bright, too fake. And it's just perfect for what we've been thinking." My throat went dry. "What you've been thinking?" Michael shrugged like it was obvious. "The layout works great for the kids, and your office can easily be converted to a nursery. We already decided this would be much easier for everyone. No more rent payments for us, closer to daycare, and honestly, Mom, you're not using all this space anyway. Tell me in the comments what you're doing right now while you listen to my story. Are you having your morning coffee, maybe folding laundry, or taking a quiet moment for yourself? Hit that like button, because each like is so important to help my voice reach other women who need to hear this. And subscribe to Grandma's Legacy, because no woman should ever feel invisible in her own life. I stepped inside slowly, past the broken eggs, past the realtor, past the woman I had never invited into my sanctuary. No one moved to clean up the mess. No one offered to help. They just stood there, waiting for me to accept their plans for my life. Now I sit here in my peaceful kitchen every morning. But back then I was about to discover just how far my own family would go to get what they wanted. I smiled, just enough to show my teeth. "Well," I said softly, "since you've all had your look." I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. I simply walked over to the front door and held it open. Wide. One by one, they filtered out. Jennifer's mother gave me a look of pity, like I was some confused old woman. The realtor muttered something about market potential. Michael kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just tried to steal my home. I shut the door behind them, turned the deadbolt. Then I picked up my phone and called the locksmith. But I had no idea this was just the beginning of their plan. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because this story starts long before today's little invasion. Robert and I bought our farm in 1975, right outside Cedar Falls. 48 years on that land, raising corn and soybeans, raising Michael, building a life with our own 2 hands. When Rob passed in 2021, suddenly everyone had opinions about what I should do next. Michael especially. "Mom, you can't stay out there alone," he'd say every time he visited. "It's too much work, too much space, too isolated." Always the same words. Too much, too much, too much. Like everything about my life was excessive, unnecessary, a burden. For a year after the funeral, I tried to make the farm work. Hired help for the heavy lifting, kept Rob's vegetable garden going, maintained the house we'd shared for nearly half a century. But the loneliness was crushing. Not the solitude. I've always loved my quiet moments. The loneliness of eating dinner at a table set for 2, of talking to Rob's empty chair, of waking up every morning to silence where there used to be his humming in the shower. Michael and Jennifer would drive out every few weeks with their twin boys, Jake and Tommy, 8 years old and full of energy. I loved those visits, but I could see Jennifer getting more and more uncomfortable. She'd eye the dust on the baseboards, comment on how far we were from civilization, suggest that maybe it was time for me to downsize. That word, downsize. Like my whole life needed to be smaller, quieter, less. In early 2023, something shifted. Maybe it was turning 72. Maybe it was finally accepting that Rob wasn't coming back. But I realized I didn't want to spend my remaining years maintaining a shrine to my past. I wanted something that was mine alone, not the house where I'd been someone's wife, someone's mother, but never just myself. So I started looking. Not in the obvious places, no senior communities, no condos near Michael's subdivision. I wanted character, history, a house with stories in its bones. That's when I found 428 Maple Street, a 1920s Victorian painted sage green with white trim, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, hardwood floors throughout. The previous owner was an elderly teacher who'd lived there 40 years. Her children were selling because none of them wanted to move back to Iowa. The house needed updating but had good bones, a wraparound porch, and most importantly, it felt like coming home the minute I walked through the door. I made an offer that same afternoon. Cash from the sale of 40 acres Rob and I had sold to our neighbor the year before. I didn't tell Michael, didn't ask his opinion. Didn't mention it to Jennifer or my sister Karen or anyone else who might have thoughts about what I should or shouldn't do with my life. For the first time in decades, this decision was mine alone. The closing was in March. I spent April painting, having the floors refinished, buying furniture that I picked out. Not because it matched what Rob liked or what looked appropriate for a grandmother, but because it made me smile. A reading chair in deep burgundy velvet. Bookshelves for the collection I'd been keeping in boxes. A small dining table for one, positioned perfectly to watch the sunrise through the kitchen window. I told Michael I was visiting a friend those first few months when I'd disappear for days at a time. He seemed relieved that I was getting out more, which should have been my first warning sign. He thought I was finally accepting that the farm was too much for me. He thought I was preparing to give up. By May, I was ready to tell him the truth. I invited him and Jennifer for dinner at my new house. I was so proud, so excited to show them what I'd accomplished. I thought they'd be happy that I'd found a way to move forward without burdening them. I should have known better. Michael walked through every room, calculating. Jennifer commented on the potential of each space. They asked about property taxes, maintenance costs, how much I'd paid. Not once did they say it was beautiful. Not once did they ask if I was happy. What they did ask was whether I'd considered that it might be too much house for one person. Looking back now, I can see they were already planning, already seeing my home as their solution, my independence as their inconvenience. They just needed to figure out how to convince me to hand it over willingly. When that didn't work, they decided to take it anyway. The first hint something was wrong came 3 weeks after that dinner. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Linda Morrison, my old neighbor from the farm. She mentioned seeing Michael's truck at my new place quite a bit lately, when she drove past on her way to her daughter's house. "It's so nice that he's helping you get settled," she said with that smile people give you when they think you need help with everything. But I hadn't asked Michael to help with anything. And I'd only seen him once since the dinner, a brief visit when he'd brought the boys to see the house. When I got home that afternoon, I noticed things. Small things. A window in the back bedroom was unlocked. I always lock them before leaving. One of my kitchen drawers was slightly open. Nothing was missing. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but something felt off, like someone had been there, moving through my space, touching my things. I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief and change make you suspicious, I reasoned, but I started paying closer attention. The next week, Jennifer called with an unusual request. Could she borrow my punch bowl for a baby shower she was hosting? Of course, I said, but when she came to pick it up, she spent an awful lot of time just looking around and asking questions about my decorating choices. She measured my kitchen window with her hands, stood in the doorway of each bedroom like she was imagining furniture arrangements. "You know," she said as she was leaving, "this house has such good bones. The right family could really make it shine." The right family. Not me, apparently. 2 days later, my sister Karen called. She'd heard, through the grapevine, that Michael and Jennifer were having money troubles. Something about Jennifer's maternity leave being unpaid longer than expected, daycare costs going up, their rent increasing. "You know how proud he is," Karen said. "He'd never ask for help directly." But I hadn't offered help. And more importantly, Michael hadn't mentioned any financial stress to me. That weekend, I decided to do a little investigating of my own. I drove past Michael and Jennifer's apartment complex, the same one where they'd lived for 3 years. There was a notice posted in the lobby. Rent increases effective July 1st. Their 2-bedroom was going from $1,200 to $1,750 a month, a 37% increase. Suddenly, their interest in my extra space made perfect sense. The next incident was harder to dismiss. I came home from my book club on a Thursday evening to find my spare key missing from the magnetic holder under the back porch step. I'd put it there the day I moved in, just as a backup, hidden behind the lattice work where no one would think to look. Except someone had thought to look. I searched everywhere, convinced I must have moved it and forgotten. But deep down, I knew. Someone had taken it. Someone who knew where I'd hide things, who'd watched me closely enough to figure out my habits. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Was that a car door? Footsteps on the porch? At 3 a.m., I got up and checked every lock twice, pushed a chair against the back door for good measure. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store and bought new locks. Not because I was certain someone had my key, but because I needed to feel safe in my own home. The clerk, a young man with kind eyes, asked if everything was all right. I found myself saying yes automatically, the way women my age are trained to do. Everything's fine, don't worry about me. But everything wasn't fine. 2 weeks later, Jennifer called again. This time, she wondered if she could bring a friend by to see the house. "She's looking to buy in the area, and I told her how charming your place is." The friend turned out to be a real estate agent named Brenda Walsh. She spent 45 minutes asking questions about the neighborhood, the local schools, whether I'd had any problems with the plumbing or electrical systems. "Properties like this don't come on the market often," she told Jennifer as they were leaving. "If your mother-in-law ever decides to sell," Jennifer laughed, "oh, we definitely want first right of refusal." First right of refusal on my home that I'd never offered to sell. That night, I called my lawyer, George Patterson, who'd handled Rob's estate. I asked him about property rights, about what would happen to my house if something happened to me, about whether adult children could force their parents to sell homes they didn't approve of. "Margaret," George said gently, "is there something going on I should know about?" I found myself telling him everything. The missing key, the unexpected visits, Jennifer's casual comments about the right family for my house. As I spoke, I could hear how it sounded, like an old woman getting paranoid, reading too much into innocent family concern. "Your house is yours," George assured me. "As long as you're competent to make your own decisions, and you clearly are, no one can force you to do anything with your property. But Margaret, if you're feeling pressured—" "I'm not feeling pressured," I said quickly. "I'm just being cautious." But I was feeling pressured. Every visit from Michael felt like an inspection. Every comment from Jennifer felt like a critique. Every suggestion about downsizing felt like a demand. I thought about what Rob would have said. He'd always been direct, sometimes too direct. "If someone's trying to push you around, Maggie, you push back twice as hard." I was about to get the chance to test that advice, because the very next week I walked into my own house and found them measuring my walls. 3 days after I found them in my house, Michael called like nothing had happened. "Hey, Mom, how are you settling in?" His voice was casual, cheerful, the same tone he'd used when he was 12 and trying to convince me he hadn't broken my favorite vase. "I'm fine, Michael." I kept my voice steady, "though I was surprised to find you in my house the other day." "Oh, that." He laughed, actually laughed. "Jennifer wanted her mom to see the place, and I thought it would be nice to show them around. We used the spare key. Hope you don't mind." "Hope You don't mind. About entering my home without permission, bringing strangers inside, measuring my rooms like they were planning a renovation. Which spare key would that be, Michael? A pause. Just long enough for me to know I'd caught him. The one from, "Didn't you give us a spare key?" "No, I didn't." Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh. Well, maybe Jennifer got one from—" "I'm not sure how we got in, honestly. The back door might have been unlocked." He was lying. My son was lying to my face, and we both knew it. "Michael," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something directly. Are you having financial problems?" "What?" "No, I mean, everyone's having financial problems these days, but we're managing. Because if you need help, Mom, we don't need help. We're fine." But his voice had that edge it got when he was defensive. The same tone from high school when he'd insist he hadn't been drinking at parties while reeking of beer. Then why was there a real estate agent in my living room? Silence. Complete. Telling silence. "She wasn't a real estate agent," he finally said. "She was just a friend of Jennifer's mom. A friend who was calculating square footage and asking about property values. Mom, you're making this sound much more dramatic than it was. We were just looking around. In my house. Without my permission, making measurements." We weren't making measurements. But I knew what I'd seen. The measuring tape in his hands. The faint marks on my hardwood floors where someone had stretched tape across doorways. The way they'd all scattered when I walked in, like children caught stealing cookies. If you're feeling the betrayal with me right now, show your support. Hit that like button, comment if you've ever had family members cross your boundaries like this, and subscribe because we need to stick together when the people closest to us try to take advantage. "Michael," I said, my voice getting stronger, "I want you to be honest with me. Are you planning to ask me to let you live in my house? Would that be so terrible?" The defensive edge was gone now, replaced by something that sounded almost like pleading. "Mom, we're paying $1,650 a month for a tiny apartment. The boys are sharing a bedroom the size of your closet, and you're rattling around in that big house all by yourself." There it was. Finally, the truth. "So you thought you'd just move in?" "We thought we'd discuss it, as a family. By measuring my rooms and bringing in real estate agents? We were trying to see if it would work, practically, before we brought it up and got your hopes up." Got my hopes up? Like I'd been desperately hoping for my adult son to move in and take over my house? "Michael," I said, "did it occur to you to have this conversation with me before you started making plans?" "Of course it did. But you get so attached to things, Mom. We thought if we could show you how well it would work for everyone." So attached to things, like my home, my space, my independence were just things I needed to get over. How well it would work for everyone except me. It would work for you too. You'd have help with maintenance, you'd see the boys every day, Jennifer could help with cooking and cleaning. Help with cooking and cleaning. In my own house. Like I was incapable of caring for myself. And where exactly would I fit in this arrangement? Another pause. "Well, you'd keep the master bedroom, obviously, and we thought the boys could share the back bedroom, and Jennifer and I would take the middle room. Your office could be the baby's room." "The baby's room?" "We're pregnant again, Mom. 8 weeks. We haven't told anyone yet, but with 3 kids we really need more space." Pregnant. They were planning to move into my house and have their 3rd child in what used to be my office. They'd mapped out my entire home, assigned every room, planned every detail, without asking me. "Congratulations," I managed. "But Michael, this is my house. I know it's your house. We're not trying to take it away from you." "Then what are you trying to do?" "We're trying to help you. Mom, you bought this place without talking to anyone. You made a major life decision in isolation. That's not healthy." "Not healthy?" Now I was unhealthy for making independent choices. "I bought this house because I wanted a fresh start, because I wanted something that was mine. But it doesn't have to be just yours. Family takes care of family. Family takes care of family. The phrase I'd heard my whole life, usually right before someone asked me to sacrifice something I wanted for something they needed. You're right, I said quietly. Family does take care of family. Which is why family asks before they start making plans. Family respects boundaries. Family doesn't steal keys and sneak around behind each other's backs. Mom, I need to go, Michael. Can we at least talk about this? Reasonably? Reasonably. Like I was the one being unreasonable for objecting to my son moving into my house without my consent. We can talk, I said. When you're ready to actually talk. Not when you're ready to present me with decisions you've already made about my life. I hung up the phone and sat in my burgundy reading chair, shaking. They thought they knew me. Thought I was the same woman who'd spent 50 years saying yes to everything, accommodating everyone, putting my own needs last. They had no idea who I'd become. The locksmith arrived at 8 a.m. the next morning, a woman about my age named Carol, who took one look at my face and asked no questions. Just got to work. New locks on all exterior doors, she said, drilling out the old deadbolts. And I'd recommend changing the garage door code too, if you have one. I watched her work, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: control, agency, the power to decide who could and couldn't enter my space. You doing okay, honey? Carol asked as she fitted the new lock on the front door. You look like you've got something weighing on you. Just family stuff, I said. She nodded. Family can be the hardest thing to lock out. While she finished the locks, I called George Patterson, my lawyer. George, I need to ask you about property protection. If someone has been in my house without permission, what are my rights? Margaret, did someone break in? Not exactly break in, but entered without permission, using a key they shouldn't have had. Family member? My son. A pause. I see. Well, legally, it's still trespassing if you didn't give permission, family or not. But most families try to work these things out without involving law enforcement. What if I don't want to work it out? What if I want clear boundaries? Then you set clear boundaries. Change your locks. Sounds like you're already on that. Send a written notice that they no longer have permission to enter without explicit invitation. Document everything. Document everything. I'd been a farmer's wife for decades. I knew how to keep records. After Carol left with my new keys, I sat down at my kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote down everything I could remember. Dates, conversations, the missing spare key, the measurements on my floor, the real estate agent. All of it. Then I picked up the phone and called Jennifer directly. Oh, hi, Margaret, she said, and I could hear the wariness in her voice. I was going to call you today, actually. Were you? Michael told me you were upset about us being at the house the other day. I think there might have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, like I'd misunderstood finding them measuring my walls. Jennifer, I need to ask you something directly. Did you take a key from my house? Silence. Then, we thought you wouldn't mind if we had a spare, just in case of emergencies. So you took one without asking. It wasn't like that. Michael said you'd mentioned wanting us to have one. Michael had said, of course. Jennifer, I never said that. And even if I had, taking something from someone's home without permission isn't okay. You're right. I should have asked. I'm sorry. At least she was admitting it. That was more than Michael had done. Jennifer, are you planning to ask me if your family can move into my house? Another pause. We were hoping to discuss it with you, yes. And the real estate agent? We wanted to understand the value of the property in case it made sense for everyone. In case it made sense for everyone. Not in case I agreed to it. Jennifer, I want to be very clear about something. This is my house. I bought it for myself, with my own money, to be my home. It's not available for your family to move into. But Margaret, we're family. And you have so much space. Having space doesn't obligate me to give it up. We're not asking you to give it up. We're asking you to share it. Without asking me first if I wanted to share it. We were trying to figure out if it would work before we got your hopes up. There was that phrase again. My hopes up. Like I'd been sitting around hoping for my son to take over my house. My hopes are for peace and independence, I said firmly. My hopes are to live in the home I chose without having to justify every room to people who think I don't deserve the space I occupy. That's not what we think. Isn't it? Then why measure my walls without my permission? Why bring in a real estate agent to assess my property? Why make plans for my home without including me in the conversation? We were trying to be practical. You were trying to be controlling. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Margaret, we can't afford to keep living where we are. Our rent is going up to $1,650, and with the new baby coming... Congratulations on your pregnancy, Jennifer. But your housing situation isn't my responsibility to solve. We're not asking you to solve it. We're asking you to help us. By giving up my home? By sharing your home. I looked around my kitchen, my sunny, peaceful kitchen with the small table for one and the window that perfectly framed the maple tree in my backyard. This was mine. I had chosen it. I had earned it. No, I said quietly. No? No, I will not share my home. No, I will not discuss moving your family into my house. No, I will not feel guilty for wanting to live independently in the space I bought with my own money. Margaret, I've changed the locks, Jennifer. All of them. If you want to visit my house, you need to call and ask. If I say yes, you come when I invite you. If I say no, you respect that. You're being unreasonable. I'm being clear. There's a difference. I hung up the phone and immediately called Michael. Mom, Jennifer said you changed the locks. I did. That seems extreme. What seems extreme is finding strangers in my living room measuring my walls. We need to talk about this face to face. We can talk, Michael, but we'll talk on my terms, in my house, when I invite you, not when you decide to show up with your own agenda. This isn't like you, Mom. He was right. It wasn't like the old me. The old me would have apologized for being difficult, found a way to accommodate everyone else's needs, sacrificed my own comfort to keep the peace. But I wasn't the old me anymore. You're right, I said. It's like the new me. And the new me doesn't apologize for taking up space. The silent treatment lasted exactly 1 week. 7 days of no phone calls, no text messages, no visits. 7 days of blessed peace in my little house with my new locks and my clear boundaries. I spent the time doing exactly what I wanted, reading in my burgundy chair, working in the small garden I'd started in the backyard, rearranging furniture without anyone's input about what would work better for everyone. On day 8, my sister Karen called. Maggie, what the hell is going on between you and Michael? Karen had never been one to ease into difficult conversations. He didn't tell you? He told me you overreacted to them visiting your house and now you've barricaded yourself behind new locks like some kind of hermit. But knowing you and knowing him, I figure there's more to the story. I told her everything, the stolen key, the measurements, the real estate agent, the assumption that I'd just hand over my home because they needed more space. Karen was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then, Jesus, Maggie, I'm proud of you. Proud of me? For finally standing up to him. Do you know how long I've been waiting for you to grow a backbone with that boy? It shouldn't have surprised me that Karen saw through Michael's version of events. She'd raised 3 kids of her own and had never been impressed with his sense of entitlement. He thinks I'm being unreasonable. Of course he does. He's used to you being a pushover. When someone's been getting their way for 37 years, equality feels like oppression. The next day, Jennifer's mother called. This was unexpected. Mrs. Sullivan, I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. Of course not, Patricia. Though I did mind, actually. I minded all of these people inserting themselves into my business. I wanted to apologize for the other day. I had no idea you weren't expecting us. At least someone was willing to apologize. I appreciate that, Patricia. Jennifer is very upset about the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. There was that word again. Patricia, there wasn't a misunderstanding. Your daughter and my son entered my home without permission, made measurements for renovations I never agreed to, and brought in a real estate agent to assess my property. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a violation. Silence. Then, I think they were just trying to help. Help with what? I didn't ask for help. Well, no, but you are getting older, and this house is quite large for one person. Getting older. Like aging was something I was doing wrong, something that needed to be managed by younger people who knew better. Patricia, I'm 72, not 92. I'm perfectly capable of deciding how much space I need. Of course. But wouldn't it be nice to have family close by, to help with things? If I wanted family close by, I would have invited family to move close by. Another silence. Mrs. Sullivan, they're having financial difficulties. The rent increase is quite substantial. I understand that, but their financial difficulties don't entitle them to my house. No, but wouldn't you want to help if you could? There it was. The guilt. The expectation that because I could help, I should help. That because I had space, I owed it to others. That because I was family, my needs came last. Patricia, I help in lots of ways. I babysit the boys, I buy them clothes and toys, I take them on outings. But I don't owe anyone my home. I suppose that's your right. It is my right, and it's also my choice. That weekend, Michael finally called. Mom, we need to talk. I agree. Can I come over? You can come over Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Alone. Alone? Jennifer should be part of this conversation. Jennifer can have her own conversation with me later if she wants, but this conversation is between you and me. He arrived exactly on time, which told me he was nervous. Michael was only punctual when he was worried about getting in trouble. I made coffee and we sat at my small kitchen table. He looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. It really is a nice house, Mom. Thank you. I still think it's too big for one person. And I still think that's my decision to make. He sighed. Look, I'm sorry we went about this wrong. We should have talked to you first. You should have. But Mom, we really are struggling. The rent increase is going to be impossible, and with the new baby coming. Michael, I understand you're struggling, and I'm sorry about that, but struggling doesn't give you the right to make decisions about my property. We weren't making decisions. We were exploring options. You were measuring my walls. We were trying to see if it could work, without asking me if I wanted it to work. He was quiet for a moment. Would you consider it, if we approached it differently? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who I loved deeply, who somehow thought my happiness was less important than his convenience. No, Michael, I wouldn't consider it. His face fell. Why not? Because this is my home, because I bought it to be independent, not to be a live-in babysitter and housekeeper, because I deserve to have something that's mine alone. But we're your family. And family respects each other's boundaries. It's been 6 months since I changed those locks, and I wish I could tell you it was smooth sailing from there. It wasn't. Michael and Jennifer found a smaller apartment across town, farther from my house, farther from the boys' school. They managed the rent increase by taking on credit card debt and working extra hours. Jennifer went back to work earlier than planned after the baby was born, a little girl they named Sophie. For a while, our relationship was strained. Awkward phone calls. Stilted visits. The boys asking why Grandma's house had different locks now and why Daddy seemed sad when he talked about me. But something interesting happened during those months of tension. I discovered that I didn't actually need their approval to be happy. I joined a book club at the local library where I met women who lived alone by choice and loved it. Women who had downsized, but on their own terms. Women who had learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. I started volunteering at the community garden, teaching younger families how to grow vegetables. I took a watercolor class at the community college. I learned to use the Uber app so I could go to dinner and have a glass of wine without worrying about driving home. Most importantly, I learned to enjoy my own company in a way I never had when I was married. Not because I hadn't loved Rob, I had, deeply, but because I'd never been just Margaret before. I'd always been someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. Now, finally, I was just me. The house felt different too. Peaceful in a way it hadn't when I was constantly worried about someone else's opinion of my choices. I painted the front door a bold red because I liked it. I planted roses that might be too much work, but made me smile every morning. I bought expensive sheets and ate breakfast in bed on Sundays just because I could. 3 months after our kitchen table conversation, Michael called with news. "Mom, Jennifer got a promotion, a big one. We're going to be okay financially." "That's wonderful news, Michael. I'm so proud of her." "And Mom, I owe you an apology, a real one. I was quiet, waiting. I was wrong to assume you'd want us to live with you. I was wrong to go into your house without permission. I was wrong to act like your independence was a problem that needed solving instead of a choice that deserved respect." Those words meant more to me than he could know. I also talked to Jennifer about the key thing. She feels terrible about taking it. We both do. "I appreciate that, Michael. Can we try again? With boundaries this time?" "I'd like that." Our first real visit after that conversation was different. They called ahead. They asked what time worked for me. When they arrived, Michael knocked on the door instead of just walking in, even though I'd given him a new spare key by then. The boys ran through the house like they always had, but Jennifer didn't comment on my decorating choices or suggest better arrangements. Michael didn't calculate square footage with his eyes or mention how much space I had. Instead, they asked about my watercolor class, my book club, my garden. They listened when I told them about my new friends. They seemed genuinely interested in my life, not just in how my life could serve their needs. Jennifer's new job was in marketing for a medical device company. The pay was almost double what she'd been making, and it came with benefits that covered Sophie's daycare. I should have been looking for better work all along instead of assuming someone else would solve our problems, she admitted during one visit. I got comfortable thinking that struggling was just how life was supposed to be. Michael nodded. We both did. It was easier to look at your house and think, there's our solution, than to figure out how to create our own solutions. They moved into a better apartment in a neighborhood they actually wanted to live in. Close to good schools, near a park where the boys could ride bikes. For the first time since they'd been married, they seemed genuinely happy with their living situation, instead of just grateful to have a roof over their heads. The best part was watching how this change affected the boys. They were more relaxed during visits, less anxious about space and noise and whether they were bothering anyone. They started asking to spend the night sometimes, and I could say yes because it was my choice, not an obligation. I also started hosting holidays again. Not the massive productions I used to put on when Rob was alive, but intimate dinners with foods I actually wanted to make. Michael and Jennifer brought dishes to share. We played games the boys picked out. We talked about books I was reading, places I wanted to travel, projects I was working on. For the first time in years, I felt like a person at family gatherings instead of just a service provider. 6 months in, I got an unexpected visitor. Patricia, Jennifer's mother, came by one afternoon with a bouquet of flowers from her garden. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Thank me?" "For not enabling them, for forcing them to figure things out on their own." I invited her in for coffee, curious about this change of heart. "You know, when Jennifer first told me you'd refuse to let them move in, I thought you were being selfish," Patricia admitted. "But watching how they've grown these past months, I realize you did them a favor." "How so?" "They're proud of themselves now. They solve their own problems. Jennifer never would have pushed for that promotion if she thought she had an easy backup plan. Michael never would have taken on the overtime that helped them save for a bigger apartment." We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd found them all measuring walls 6 months earlier. And Patricia looked around with genuine appreciation. "It really is lovely what you've done with this place. It feels like you." "Thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I owe you an apology, too, for assuming you should sacrifice your comfort for theirs." for thinking that being a grandmother meant being available for whatever your family needed, whenever they needed it. Well, we all learned something. As she was leaving, Patricia turned back. You know, I might look into getting my own place soon. I've been living with my sister since my divorce, and seeing how happy you are living alone. It's making me think maybe I could be happy that way too. I smiled. Independence is contagious. That evening, I sat in my burgundy reading chair with a cup of tea and my latest book, watching the sunset through my perfectly positioned window. The house was quiet, but not empty. It was full of my choices, my peace, my contentment. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, my grandson. Grandma, can we come visit this weekend? I want to show you the robot I built. I texted back. Of course. Come Saturday at 2. I'll make cookies. Another text, this one from Michael. Thanks for being patient with us, Mom. We're learning. I looked around my living room, my space, my sanctuary, my home that no one else had the right to claim or judge or redesign. Outside, my red door glowed in the sunset, bold and unapologetic. This was what I'd been fighting for. Not just a house, but the right to exist on my own terms. The right to take up space without apologizing. The right to say no without guilt. I'd spent 50 years accommodating everyone else's needs. These were the years for accommodating my own. Here I am, sitting in my quiet kitchen on a Tuesday morning, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, watching cardinals at the feeder outside my window. It's been a year since I changed those locks, and I want to tell you what I've learned. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. They don't keep love out. They make sure that what comes in is actually love, and not just need dressed up as affection. I learned that family helps family doesn't mean family sacrifices everything for family. It means family respects, family enough to ask before taking, to listen before assuming, to support independence instead of demanding dependence. I learned that being alone and being lonely are completely different things. I was lonelier in that farmhouse, surrounded by memories and expectations, than I've ever been in this little house that's entirely my own. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to start living for yourself. At 72, I thought my choices were made, my path was set. My role was simply to be helpful and grateful for whatever scraps of independence others were willing to allow me. I was wrong. Every woman over 50 knows the pressure to shrink. To need less space, less attention, less consideration. To be grateful for whatever our adult children decide is best for us. To apologize for inconveniencing people with our continued existence. But here's what I want you to know. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to justify the space you occupy. You don't have to solve everyone else's problems with your resources, your home, your life. You have the right to live exactly as you choose, as long as you're not hurting anyone. And protecting your peace isn't hurting anyone. It's modeling what self-respect looks like. If someone in your life is pressuring you to give up something you value, your home, your independence, your boundaries, ask yourself this. Are they asking because they love you or because they need something from you? Love doesn't demand sacrifice. Need does. Michael and Jennifer visit every other weekend now. They call before coming. They contribute to meals instead of expecting to be served. They respect my schedule and my space. Our relationship is better now than it's been in years, precisely because I stopped trying to be everything to everyone and started being honest about what I needed. The boys are thriving in their new neighborhood. Jennifer loves her job. Michael has started his own small business. They solve their problems by facing them, not by expecting someone else to make them disappear. And me? I'm planning a trip to Ireland next spring. I'm taking pottery classes. I'm considering adopting a cat. I'm living a life that's entirely my own design. If this story of standing up for yourself touched your heart, like this video right now, tell me in the comments what gave you the courage to set boundaries in your own life and subscribe to Grandma's legacy. Because every woman deserves to have her voice heard and her choices respected. Remember, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You are not obligated to make yourself smaller so others can be bigger. You are not responsible for solving problems you didn't create with resources you worked hard to earn. You have the right to lock your doors and decide who gets the keys. You have the right to take up space. You have the right to say no. And if anyone tells you different, well, they probably need to hear this story too.